He thought he was digging for water until his dog started trying to stop him from something underground. Daniel Mercer had one last shot to save his dying ranch. A buried stone pile stood between him and hope, but the moment his shovel struck metal, everything changed. His German shepherd, Koda, wasn't just warning him, he was protecting him. From what? Daniel didn't understand yet, and by the time he did, it was already too late to walk away. Before we go further, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. The wind came down off the Idaho mountains like a dry breath, dragging dust across the dead pasture in slow, restless sheets. It rattled the loose boards on Daniel Mercer's barn and hissed through the brittle grass that hadn't seen real rain in months. But Daniel stood beside the old bulldozer, one hand resting on the metal frame, feeling the faint heat still trapped in the steel from the morning sun. The machine was older than most men in the county, paint faded, edges worn smooth from decades of use, but it still ran. That was enough. Across the field, rising out of the cracked earth like a scar that refused to heal, sat the stone pile. It didn't belong there. Everything else on the land followed a kind of logic. Fences, troughs, even the way the hills rolled into each other. But that pile, it looked like something pushed up from below, not built from above. Stones fused together, weathered into unnatural angles, gray with a faint red undertone that caught the light wrong. Daniel narrowed his eyes at it. He'd walked past it for years, left it alone, same as his father had, and same as his grandfather before him. But the land didn't care about tradition anymore. He glanced back toward the house. The porch sagged slightly on one side. A single envelope sat just inside the screen door, white and sharp against the shadowed floorboards. He didn't need to read it again. Final notice. Daniel exhaled slowly, then reached up and pulled himself into the bulldozer's cab. The seat creaked under his weight. The smell inside was familiar. Diesel, dust, old leather baked by too many summers. His hand hovered over the ignition for a second longer than necessary. Then he turned the key. The engine coughed, shuddered, then roared to life. A low, grinding vibration rolled through the machine and up into his chest. The sound pushed everything else away, the wind, the quiet, the thoughts he didn't want. Focus. And he eased the throttle forward. The tracks bit into the dirt, metal grinding against stone as the bulldozer lurched ahead. "Stay," he muttered, not looking back. Koda had been lying near the truck, a gray and black shape against the dust. The dog usually didn't need to be told twice. He understood boundaries better than most people Daniel had known. For a few seconds, everything held. The bulldozer moved. The blade lowered. The stone pile grew larger in the windshield. Then something changed. Daniel didn't hear it at first. He felt it. A shift in the air behind him. A break in rhythm. He glanced in the side mirror. Koda was no longer by the truck. The dog was moving, fast. Not running wide. Not circling like he did when he picked up a scent. Straight line. Head low. Ears pinned back. Daniel frowned. "Oh, Koda!" The word barely left his mouth before the dog cut in front of the bulldozer. Daniel slammed the throttle back instinctively. The engine dropped to a rough idle, the machine jerking as it slowed. Koda didn't stop. He planted himself directly in front of the blade, paws digging into the dirt, body rigid. A low, vibrating growl rolled out of his chest. Not loud, but deep enough that Daniel felt it through the glass. That wasn't right. "Move," Daniel said, sharper now. "Heel!" Koda didn't even look at him. The dog turned his head slightly, nose almost touching the ground, then started digging. Fast, violent. Dirt flew backward in tight arcs as his front paws tore into the packed earth. Daniel stared. Koda didn't dig like that. Not for rabbits, not for snakes. Not for anything. This was different. Well, the dog stopped for half a second, barked once, short, sharp, and then went back to clawing at the same exact spot. No wandering, no hesitation. Just that one place. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He pushed the door open and dropped down from the cab. His boots hit the ground with a dull thud, dust puffing around his ankles. "Koda, enough." No response. The dog kept digging, breath coming fast, a high, strained edge creeping into the sound. He paused again, looked up at Daniel for a split second, eyes wide, focused, and then back to the ground. Daniel had seen that look before. Not here. Somewhere else. A different place. Different heat. Different dirt. He shut the thought down before it could take shape. "All right," he muttered, more to himself now. He walked over. It grabbed the shovel from where it leaned against the bulldozer's track and stepped up beside the dog. Koda shifted slightly, but didn't move away. He kept working, faster now, as if the ground itself was running out of time. Daniel drove the shovel into the earth. The soil was harder than it should have been, packed tight, almost like clay, mixed with small fragments of stone. He put his weight into it, boot pressing down on the blade. The shovel sank an inch, then another. He levered it up, tossing the dirt aside. Koda immediately filled the space, digging deeper, pushing the loose soil away with frantic efficiency. They worked like that for a minute. 2. No words. Just the sound of metal scraping earth and the dog's claws tearing through dirt. Then it happened. The shovel hit something, not stone, while the impact traveled up the handle, sharp and hollow, vibrating through Daniel's arms. He froze. The wind seemed to drop away for a second. Koda stopped digging. The dog's head snapped toward the spot where the shovel had struck. His body went still, completely still, like a switch had been flipped. Daniel slowly pulled the shovel back and scraped it across the surface beneath the dirt. A harsh, grating sound answered him. Metal. Not rusted scrap, not debris. Something solid. Flat. He cleared more dirt, hands moving faster now, pushing aside clumps of dry earth. The edge of it began to show, a dark, smooth surface beneath the dust. Too smooth, too even. Daniel crouched lower, brushing away the dirt with his gloved hand. Cold metal met his skin. Koda let out a low whine, stepping back for the first time. His ears flattened, his tail stiff, eyes locked on the exposed surface. Daniel didn't look at him. He kept uncovering it. An edge appeared. Then a corner. Square. Perfectly square. The ground hadn't grown this. Someone had put it there. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. His breathing slowed, almost automatically, as if some part of him had switched over without asking permission. Scan the area. Open field. No movement. Tree line. Still. Wind direction. Left to right. No sound, but the dry hiss of air over dirt. He shifted his weight, angling his body without thinking, keeping his back partially toward the bulldozer. Line of sight, clear across the pasture. Koda moved with him, pressing close to his leg now, not digging anymore. Watching. Waiting. Daniel brushed away the last of the dirt from the corner of the object and rested his hand flat against it. The metal was colder than it should have been under the afternoon sun. He didn't pull his hand away. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, faint and distant, something echoed in the back of his mind. Not a sound he could hear. Something remembered. A door. A hatch. A place underground where air didn't move the way it was supposed to. Daniel's fingers curled slightly against the metal. Behind him, the bulldozer engine idled low, a steady mechanical heartbeat in the silence. Koda let out a quiet, strained breath. And for the first time since stepping out of the house that morning, Daniel Mercer felt it clearly. Not fear. Not yet. but something close enough to make him stop digging. But something that made the open sky above him feel smaller. He kept his hand on the metal a second longer. Then slowly, without taking his eyes off the ground, he said, "What did you find, boy?" Koda didn't answer the way a dog usually would. No bark, no wag, no shift in stance. Just a low, steady sound deep in his chest, barely audible, more vibration than noise. Daniel let his hand rest on the metal a second longer, then pulled it away. The air felt different, not colder, not hotter, just wrong. He stood up slowly, eyes scanning the pasture again, this time with more intent. The habit slipped back into place without effort. Check the horizon. Check the angles. Check what didn't move. Nothing. Just empty land. Dry grass. The distant ridge cutting a hard line against the pale sky. He exhaled through his nose, and then stepped back from the exposed corner. "All right," he muttered. "Not today." He grabbed the shovel, pushed a few loose clumps of dirt back over the metal, enough to dull the sharp edges, and turned away. Koda didn't follow right away. The dog stayed there, staring at the ground as if something might move under it. Only when Daniel took a few steps toward the bulldozer did Koda finally turn, trotting close, shoulder brushing against Daniel's leg. Too close. Daniel noticed. He didn't say anything. The sun had dipped low by the time he shut the bulldozer down. The engine rattled once, then died, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than it should have. The wind picked up again, pushing dust across the yard in thin, restless lines. Daniel climbed down, slower this time. His boots hit the ground. And for a second, just a second, he paused, head tilted slightly. There. A sound. Not real. Just memory. Rotor blades. Faint. Distant. He blinked hard, jaw tightening. Gone. He grabbed the shovel, leaned it back against the side of the machine, then walked toward the house. Koda stayed glued to him. Every step, every shift, not scouting ahead, not drifting off, just close. Daniel pushed open the screen door. It creaked the way it always did, a long, tired groan that echoed through the small house. The envelope was still on the floor. He picked it up this time. Didn't sit down. Didn't take off his boots. He tore it open standing there in the doorway. The paper inside was thin. Official. Clean. Final notice of foreclosure. He read it once. Then again. Same words. Same tone. Polite. Cold. 30 days. Now Daniel folded it back along the crease and set it on the table without looking at it again. Koda moved ahead of him, nose low, circling once before settling near the kitchen wall. But he didn't lie down. He just stood there, ears angled toward the door, eyes shifting back and forth between Daniel and the outside. Daniel noticed that too. He walked to the sink, turned the faucet. The pipes rattled before a thin stream of water came out. Weak pressure. Almost nothing. He watched it run for a moment, then shut it off. That was the problem. Not the bank, not the letters. Water, or the lack of it. He leaned both hands on the edge of the counter, head dipping slightly. 30 days, maybe less. Unless... His eyes shifted toward the window. The north field, the stone pile, the metal under it. Though, and he pushed himself upright and turned away. Night settled in fast. Out here there wasn't much transition. The light just dropped, the temperature followed, and the land went quiet. Daniel sat in the old chair by the window, boots still on, a half-finished cup of coffee cooling in his hand. The house creaked around him, wood shifting, wind pressing against the walls. Normal sounds. He cataloged them without thinking, but his eyes kept drifting back to the dark shape outside. The field wasn't visible anymore, just a deeper shadow where it should have been. Koda lay on the floor near the door, except he wasn't resting. His head stayed up, ears moving, body still. Daniel took a slow sip of coffee. Bitter. Cold. Didn't matter. He set the mug down on the small table beside him, closed his eyes. For a second, everything went quiet. Then, a flash. White. Too bright. Sound followed. Not wind. Not wood. A sharp, concussive crack that didn't belong in this house. Daniel's body reacted before his mind caught up. He was on his feet, chair knocked back behind him, hand reaching for something that wasn't there anymore. Rifle, sidearm, anything. Nothing. The room snapped back into place around him. No explosion, no fire. Just the same dim light and the low whistle of wind through the cracks. His breathing came in short bursts, controlled, but fast. Koda was already there. The dog pressed into him, head pushing hard against Daniel's chest, forcing him backward a step. A low whine cut through the silence, urgent, insistent. Daniel's hands found the dog's shoulders automatically, solid, warm, real. He let out a slow breath, not longer this time, then another. Koda didn't move until Daniel's grip loosened. The dog stepped back slightly, but stayed close, eyes locked on him. Daniel ran a hand down the side of Koda's neck, fingers catching in the thick fur. "I'm good," he muttered. His voice sounded rough. Didn't matter. Koda watched him a second longer. Then, slowly, the dog lowered himself to the floor, still facing the door. Daniel turned back toward the window. The darkness outside hadn't changed, but something inside him had shifted. Not panic. That had passed. Something else. Focus. He moved to the table, picked up the foreclosure notice again, then put it back down. His gaze drifted to the far wall. A map hung there, old, worn, edges curled, property lines, water tables, old survey marks. He stepped closer and ran a finger along one of the faded lines, then to another, then stopped, right where the stone pile sat. He stared at that spot longer than the rest. The theory had always been simple, too simple. A structure that size didn't just exist without reason. Not here, not in dead ground. Something had kept it stable. Something below water. Had to be. Unless... He cut the thought off. Didn't need it. Not yet. Behind him, Koda shifted. Not a full movement. Just enough. A low sound slipped out of the dog again. Daniel didn't turn. He already knew where Koda was looking. North Field. Same as before. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. He walked to the door, rested his hand on the handle. Didn't open it. Just stood there. Listening. The wind had picked up again. It pushed against the house in uneven bursts, carrying dust, dry grass, and something faint underneath. A smell. Hard to place. Metal. Cold. He let go of the handle, turned back inside. "Tomorrow," he said quietly. Not to the dog. Not really. Just out loud. He walked back to the chair, set himself down slower this time. Koda didn't move from the door. Didn't lie down fully either. Just waited. Daniel leaned back, eyes still open, fixed on nothing. Outside, the land stretched quiet and empty, but under that quiet, something had already changed, and neither of them were sleeping. The first light came slow over the ridge, pale and thin, stretching across the dry land, like it didn't want to be there either. Daniel was already outside before the sun cleared the hills. Same boots, same shirt from the day before. No breakfast. He moved with purpose now, not rushed, was measured. Koda was at his side the second the screen door shut behind him. No stretch, no shake, no lazy morning routine. The dog's head stayed low, ears forward, eyes locked toward the north field. Daniel noticed. Didn't say anything. They crossed the yard without a word. The ground crunched under their steps, dry soil breaking apart like brittle bone. As they got closer, the shape of the stone pile came back into view. Even in daylight, it didn't sit right. The shadows fell wrong across it. The angles didn't match the land. Daniel slowed about 20 yards out. Habit. He stopped. Scanned. Left. Right. Tree line. Ridge. Nothing. Still. Too still. He stepped forward again. Koda didn't wait this time. The dog moved ahead, faster than before, but not running wild. Direct, controlled. He went straight to the same spot from yesterday, nose low, tail stiff. Then he stopped, frozen. Daniel came up behind him. The loose dirt he'd kicked over the metal had shifted slightly overnight. Not much. Just enough to show the edge again. Daniel crouched, pressed his hand against the ground. Cold. Same as before. He brushed the dirt away again, slower this time. The metal came back into view. Flat. Dark. Perfect. He exhaled once, steady, then stood and walked back to the bulldozer. Koda stayed where he was, watching. Daniel climbed into the cab, started the engine. The machine roared to life, louder in the morning air. This time, he didn't hesitate. He drove forward, lowered the blade. The steel edge scraped against the earth with a harsh grind as he pushed the dirt aside in a wide sweep, clearing more of the surface. The sound hit something inside his head. Not memory yet, just pressure. He leaned into it, ignoring it. Focus. Clear the area. The blade struck something solid again. A sharper sound this time. Metal on metal. Daniel stopped the machine. Killed the engine. Silence dropped hard. He stepped down, grabbed the shovel, and went back to work. Koda moved in beside him immediately, but didn't dig this time. Just stood there, watching every motion, muscles tight. Daniel widened the hole. Not deep. Wide. Exposing the edges. Minutes passed. Then more. Sweat ran down his back despite the cold air. The shape started to reveal itself. Not just a panel, a structure. 4 sides. Clean lines. He cleared one corner, then another. By the time he stepped back, the outline was visible. A square, roughly 4 feet across, set perfectly into the ground. Not shifted, not broken. Placed. Daniel wiped his hand across the surface again, clearing more dirt. The metal beneath wasn't rusted through. Aged, yes, but intact. That meant something. He leaned closer. There, along one edge, a seam, a hinge. His jaw tightened slightly. A hatch. Koda let out a low, strained sound. Daniel didn't look at him. He kept brushing away dirt along the top edge. Then his glove caught on something. Raised. Faint. He wiped harder. Letters began to show through the grime. Faded. But there. He squinted, tilted his head slightly to catch the light. The rest was worn down. He scraped again, more aggressively now. A symbol appeared. Not clear, but familiar enough to make something shift in his chest. Military. Old. But he sat back on his heels for a second. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Behind him, Koda took a step back. Another. Then stopped. Daniel finally turned his head slightly. The dog's posture had changed again. No longer tense forward. Now pulled back. Weight shifted away from the hatch. Ears flat. Eyes wide. That wasn't curiosity. That was warning. Daniel looked back at the metal. The edges. The seams. The thickness, not civilian. Not farm equipment. Too precise, too deliberate. His hand moved to the side of the hatch, felt along the surface. There. A recessed shape. He cleared more dirt. A handle. Heavy. Built to sit flush. Daniel stared at it. Didn't touch it. Not yet. His breathing slowed again, automatically. In, out, count, focus. He shifted slightly, repositioning himself without thinking. Body angled. One knee grounded, one foot planted. Old posture. Ready. Koda made a soft sound behind him. Not a bark. Not a growl. Something in between. Daniel stood up slowly. Took 2 steps back from the hatch. Then turned fully toward the field. Scan again. Nothing. Still nothing. But the quiet had weight now. He felt it pressing in from all sides, like the land itself was holding something back. He walked back to the bulldozer, shut off the fuel line, grabbed the pry bar strapped to the side. The metal was cold in his hands. He returned to the hatch. Koda didn't follow all the way this time. The dog stopped a few feet short. Wouldn't cross that invisible line. Daniel noticed. He planted the end of the pry bar into the edge of the hatch, testing the gap. No give. He adjusted. Found a better angle. Set his weight. But paused. For a split second, his eyes flicked to the horizon again. Clear. He pushed. The bar groaned. Metal scraped. A faint, resisting shift came from beneath the surface. Not much. But enough. Daniel stopped. Held it there. Listened. Nothing. Just the wind again. Koda let out a sharp, sudden bark. Daniel's head snapped toward him. The dog wasn't looking at the hatch. He was looking past it. Toward the ridge. Daniel turned. Fast. Eyes scanning. Movement? No. Just the same line of trees. Same broken fence. Same empty sky. But something felt off. Timing. The bark had been too sharp. Too immediate. Daniel lowered the pry bar slowly. Stepped back from the hatch. Koda didn't relax. He stayed fixed, staring toward the distance. Daniel followed his gaze. Waited. Counted seconds. 10. 20. While nothing moved. Still. He didn't go back to the hatch. Not yet. Instead, he walked a slow arc around the stone pile, widening his view, checking angles, terrain, cover. Old habit. Never trust the first look. Koda stayed planted. Watching. Daniel completed the circle. Came back to the hatch. Everything looked the same, but the feeling hadn't gone away. He rested the pry bar against his shoulder, looked down at the metal, then at Koda. The dog's eyes flicked to him for a second, then back to the horizon. Daniel nodded once. Small. Decision made. He set the bar down, not opening it. Not today. Not until he knew what he was dealing with. He grabbed the shovel again and started pushing dirt back over the edges. Koda didn't help. He just watched. When the metal was mostly covered again, Daniel stood up, had wiped his hands on his jeans and stepped back. The hatch disappeared under a thin layer of earth, but it didn't feel buried. Just hidden, for now. Daniel turned toward the house. Koda followed, but he kept looking back over his shoulder every few steps. Daniel didn't. He kept walking. But his pace had changed. Slower. Heavier. Behind them, the ground sat quiet, unbroken, like it had been for years. Except now, it wasn't alone anymore. The afternoon light stretched long across the pasture, turning the dry ground a dull gold. From a distance, nothing looked different. The stone pile sat where it always had, quiet and unmoving, half swallowed by dust and time. But Daniel felt it. Not in the ground, in the way his shoulders stayed tight long after he'd left it behind. In the way Koda kept drifting back to the door, my nose pressed to the crack beneath it, pulling in slow, measured breaths. Daniel set the shovel against the side of the barn and walked toward the house without looking back. Inside, the air felt close. He moved straight to the sink, turned the faucet again. The same weak stream, same hollow rattle in the pipes. He shut it off quicker this time. Didn't watch, didn't think. Instead, he walked to the wall where the map hung. His fingers traced the same faded lines as before. Contours, old survey marks. Then the blank space where no one had bothered to record anything, where the stone pile sat. His hand hovered there, then dropped. A truck engine sounded somewhere down the road. Daniel's head lifted immediately. He didn't move toward the window. He just listened. Distance, speed, weight, older engine, slower, a gravel crunch, local. He stepped to the side of the window, just enough to catch the reflection without exposing himself fully. A pickup came into view, easing up the long dirt path toward the house. Daniel relaxed, slightly. He recognized the truck before it even stopped. Harold Pike. The engine cut. The door creaked open. Boots hit the ground. Daniel opened the front door before the man could knock. Harold stood there, hat low, face lined deep from years of sun and wind. He didn't smile, didn't say hello. His eyes moved past Daniel immediately, out toward the field. "You started digging," Harold said. Not a question. Daniel leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. "Clearing land," he answered. Harold didn't look at him. "On that patch." Daniel didn't respond. The wind picked up again, pushing dust across the yard between them. Harold finally shifted his gaze. Slow, measured. His eyes landed on Daniel, then dropped to the ground for a second, like he was choosing words he didn't want to say. "My brother tried that once," Harold said. Daniel said nothing. "Back in '82, Harold went on. "Figured same as you. Thought there might be water under it." He gave a short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Didn't get far." Daniel's posture didn't change, but something behind his eyes sharpened. What stopped him? Harold's jaw tightened slightly. He did. That was it. No explanation. Just that. The two men stood there for a moment, the silence stretching between them. Koda appeared behind Daniel, moving quietly but fast, slipping into place just inside the doorway. He didn't bark, didn't growl, he just watched Harold. Still, focused. Harold noticed. His eyes flicked down to the dog, then back up. "That one yours?" Daniel nodded once. "Good dog," Harold said. Koda didn't react. Harold looked past Daniel again, toward the north field. "You open it yet?" Daniel's grip on the doorframe tightened just slightly. "No." Harold nodded, slow. "That's something." Daniel shifted his weight. "You came out here to ask me that?" Harold shook his head once. No. He hesitated, then stepped closer, not onto the porch, but just enough that his voice didn't carry. That thing out there, he said, eyes still on the field. It ain't just a pile of rock. Daniel didn't answer. Harold kept going anyway. My old man used to say the ground around it was dead before the drought ever hit. He pointed with his chin. Nothing grows right near it. You ever notice that? Daniel had. He hadn't said it out loud before. Harold exhaled slowly. Some folks back then, they didn't go near it. Said it was wrong. Daniel let a small pause hang there. Wrong how? Harold's eyes shifted back to him. Like it didn't belong. The wind gusted again, stronger this time, rattling the loose tin on the barn roof. Koda's ears flicked. Harold straightened up, adjusting his hat. Look, he said, tone shifting slightly. You got your reasons. I get that. His eyes dropped briefly toward the house, toward where the envelope had been, then back up. But if you're gonna keep digging, he added, don't do it alone. Daniel held his gaze. Harold didn't wait for a response. He turned, walked back to his truck, and climbed in without another word. The engine started. Gravel crunched. The truck rolled away, shrinking down the long path until it disappeared beyond the bend. Daniel stayed where he was, hand still on the doorframe. Koda stepped forward, moving past him onto the porch. The dog stood there, facing the direction the truck had gone, then slowly turned his head back toward the field. Daniel followed that look. The stone pile sat in the distance, quiet and unchanged. But now, it had weight, more than before. Daniel stepped back inside and closed the door. The latch clicked. He stood there a second longer, listening. Nothing but the wind. He moved through the house, slower this time. Checked the back door. Locked. Windows. Closed. Habit again. Unconscious. By the time he sat down in the chair, the light outside had already begun to fade. Koda didn't settle right away. The dog paced once, twice, then stopped near the window facing the north field. He stood there, watching, as the sky dimmed. Daniel leaned back, eyes half-lidded, but not resting. The room darkened around him, shadows stretching across the walls. Outside, the last of the light disappeared behind the ridge, and in that quiet, a single word pressed forward in his mind again. Clearer this time, sharper. Containment. Daniel's eyes opened fully. He didn't move, didn't blink, just sat there, staring into the dark as the wind dragged across the land. And somewhere out in that field, beneath the dirt he'd pushed back into place, something waited. Not sleeping, not gone, just waiting. The night stretched thin and brittle, like the land itself might crack if the wind pushed hard enough. Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in the chair until the darkness turned gray, eyes open, tracking shadows that shifted with the first hint of dawn. Every creak of the house settled into a pattern. Every gust of wind mapped itself into something predictable. Except one thing. The silence between them. That space where something should have been, sound, movement, anything. Koda never lay down. The dog stood at the window the entire night, shifting only when the wind changed direction, nose lifting, catching something Daniel couldn't. By the time the sun broke the ridge again, Daniel was already on his feet. No coffee this time. No pause. He grabbed the pry bar from where it leaned against the wall and headed for the door. Koda moved ahead of him before he even reached it. The morning air cut colder than the day before. Now Daniel noticed that. Temperature drop overnight. No clouds. No reason for it. He filed it away without thinking. They crossed the yard faster this time. No hesitation, no scanning pause. Daniel already knew what he was walking toward. The stone pile stood exactly as before, but the ground around it looked disturbed. Not dug up, not moved, just subtle shifts, as if the dirt hadn't settled the way it should have. Daniel slowed, not stopping, just enough to feel the space. Koda reached the spot first, stopped dead. Then, a sound. Not a bark, not a growl. A short, sharp exhale through the nose. The dog stepped back. That was new. Daniel's grip tightened slightly on the pry bar. He moved in, boots pressing into the loose soil he'd covered the hatch with the day before. The dirt gave more easily this time. Too easily. He crouched, brushed it aside with his hand. The metal came back into view faster than it should have, like the ground hadn't wanted to hold it. Daniel didn't waste time. He set the pry bar into the seam where he'd tested it before. Adjusted angle, shifted weight. Inhale, push. The bar flexed slightly. Then, a sound. Low, deep. Not from the bar, from below. Daniel froze. The vibration came up through the metal, into the bar, into his hands. Subtle. But there. Koda backed up another step, then another. The dog's ears flattened tight against his skull. Daniel didn't move. Count. 1, 2, 3. Nothing followed. No second sound. No shift. Just the wind. He exhaled slowly, reset his grip, pushed again. This time the metal gave. A fraction of an inch, then more. A long, a grinding scrape echoed through the still morning air. The hatch lifted. Not fast, not clean. Like it had been sealed tight for years and didn't want to move. Daniel stepped back, letting it rise just enough to break the seal. And then it happened. A rush. Air. Not wind. Something forced out from below. Cold. Dense. Carrying a sharp, metallic smell that hit the back of his throat instantly. Koda reacted before Daniel could. The dog yelped, sharp, startled, and jumped back hard, paws scrambling against the dirt. He turned his head away, blinking fast, shaking at once like he'd run into something invisible. Daniel lifted his sleeve over his mouth automatically. The smell wasn't rot, wasn't decay, cleaner than that. Worse, like old machinery, burnt wiring, something chemical that didn't belong in open air. But he stepped closer. Slow, controlled. The hatch creaked as it settled open just enough to reveal darkness beneath. Not shadow, not shade. Black. Complete. Daniel leaned slightly, just enough to look down. Nothing. No light catching edges. No depth. Just a square hole swallowing everything. He reached down, brushed more dirt from the edge. There. Bolted into the inner wall. A ladder. Steel rungs disappearing straight into the dark. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't climb. Not yet. Instead, he stepped back again, giving the air time to move. The smell lingered, faint, but present. Koda didn't come closer. The dog stayed 10 feet back now, pacing in tight, restless arcs, head low, eyes fixed on the open hatch. Daniel watched him, read the posture. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't caution. This was refusal. As he turned back to the hatch, studied it. Edges, construction, thickness of the metal, military grade, old, but not broken down. He crouched again, ran his hand along the inside edge. His glove caught on something, raised. Paint. He wiped harder. Faded blue surfaced under the grime. A shape. Wings. A star. Daniel's breath slowed. He didn't need it to be clear. He knew it. He sat back on his heels, eyes still on the symbol, then lowered his gaze. Below it, letters, scratched, faded. But there, he brushed again. Sight. Another line beneath, harder to read. He leaned closer, angling his head. Restricted. The rest was worn away. Daniel stared at it, didn't blink. Behind him, Koda let out a low, strained whine. Daniel didn't turn. He kept looking into the dark, into the opening. Yet his hand moved toward the edge of the hatch again, paused, then pulled back. Not like this. Not blind. Not without knowing what he was stepping into. He stood up, backed away. Koda didn't wait this time. The dog moved immediately to his side, pressing against his leg, body tight, ready to move if Daniel did. Daniel grabbed the edge of the hatch and pulled. It resisted, then shifted. Heavy, slower than it opened. But it moved. He forced it down inch by inch until it settled back into place with a dull, final thud. The sound echoed across the field, then faded. Silence returned. Koda's breathing slowed slightly, but he didn't relax. Daniel stood there, looking down at the sealed hatch beneath the thin layer of disturbed earth. The symbol, the ladder, the air, all of it still sat in his head. Yet he grabbed the shovel again, covered the edges, smoothed the surface, same as before. Except this time, he knew exactly what he was covering. When he finished, he stepped back, looked at it one last time, then turned toward the house. Koda followed instantly, closer than before. Daniel didn't look back, but halfway across the field, he stopped, not turning, just standing there, listening. For a second, nothing. Then, faint. So faint it almost didn't exist. A sound. Not from the wind, not from the land. From below, a soft, distant tick. Daniel's fingers tightened slightly at his side. He didn't turn around. Didn't move. After a few seconds, it stopped. The silence returned. Clean. Empty, like nothing had ever been there. Daniel exhaled once, then kept walking. Behind him, the ground lay still, was sealed, but no longer quiet. Daniel didn't stop walking until the house was behind him and the field was out of view. Only then did his pace slow, not from exhaustion, from calculation. He reached the porch, stepped inside, and closed the door with more care than before. The latch clicked softly, almost swallowed by the wind outside. Koda moved straight past him this time, heading for the center of the room instead of the door. The dog turned in a tight circle once, then stopped, standing, not lying down, eyes flicking between the window and Daniel. Daniel crossed to the sink, turned the faucet on. Same weak stream. He watched it for a second, then shut it off. His reflection stared back at him in the window above the sink. Lined face, gray creeping through his hair, eyes sharper than they'd been the day before, and he wiped his hands on a rag that wasn't dirty. Then turned. The decision had already been made out there. He just hadn't said it out loud. Not blind, not unprepared, but not walking away either. He moved through the house with quiet efficiency, old habits sliding back into place. From a cabinet near the back, He pulled out a coiled length of climbing rope, frayed in spots, but still strong. He checked the knots automatically, fingers moving without needing his eyes. From a drawer, a heavy-duty flashlight. He clicked it once. Beam strong, batteries holding. From the corner by the door, a worn canvas tool bag. He added the pry bar, then paused. His hand hovered over the bag. For a second, his fingers twitched, reaching for something that wasn't there. A memory. Different place. Different loadout. He pulled his hand back. Oh, shut the bag. Koda watched the whole time. The dog didn't wag, didn't move closer. Just tracked every motion, body tight, waiting. Daniel slung the rope over his shoulder, grabbed the bag, and headed for the door. Koda stepped in front of him, not aggressive, not blocking, just there. Daniel stopped, looked down. Koda met his eyes. No sound, just a steady, unblinking stare. Daniel exhaled once, low. "You're coming," he said. It wasn't a command. Koda moved aside. The field felt different now, even in daylight. The wind still moved across it, but it didn't carry the same empty feel. Something underneath it. Wait. Daniel walked straight to the stone pile. No hesitation this time. No scanning pause. He already knew the layout. Already knew the angles. Koda followed, but he didn't go ahead. He stayed just behind Daniel's right side, close enough to touch. Daniel stopped at the covered hatch, set the bag down, uncoiled the rope, anchored one end to the bulldozer's blade, looping it twice, checking the tension with a firm pull. Solid. He stepped back to the hatch. Koda didn't move forward. Daniel noticed. Still didn't say anything. He drove the pry bar into the seam again. Same angle. Same pressure. The metal resisted for a second, then shifted. The hatch opened faster this time. The seal already broken. The air came again. That same cold rush. That same sharp chemical edge. Koda backed away immediately, turning his head aside. Daniel pulled his sleeve over his mouth again, blinking once as the smell hit. Stronger this time. Or maybe he just recognized it now. He let the hatch settle open and stared down into the black. Still nothing. No light catching anything below. Just that same complete absence. He clipped the rope to his belt, checked the knot once, then again. His breathing slowed, controlled. He stepped to the edge, paused. Not from fear, from memory. A narrow entrance. Dark, confined, Helmand Province. The smell wasn't the same, but it was close enough. Dust, heat, metal, a man in front of him signaling forward. Daniel's hand tightened on the rope. Koda barked, sharp, immediate. The sound snapped something loose. Daniel blinked. The field came back. The wind, the open sky above him. He exhaled once, then swung his legs over the edge. Boot found the first rung, cold metal. He shifted his weight, started down, one rung, then another. The light from above shrank quickly. How the smell grew thicker, coating his throat. He swallowed once. Didn't help. 5 feet. 10. 15. His boots hit something solid. Metal floor. He unclipped the flashlight. Switched it on. The beam cut through the darkness. The space was small, maybe 10 by 10. Steel walls, riveted panels, paint peeling in long strips, condensation clinging to the corners like sweat. Pipes ran along the ceiling, thick, coated in something that flaked under the light. Daniel stepped off the ladder, slow, measured. The sound of his boots rang too loud in the confined space. He paused, listened. Nothing. No hum. No movement. just the faint drip of something unseen. Then, the beam shifted, caught something ahead. An opening. Not a door, a tunnel. Narrow, black, leading deeper. Daniel stopped. The air changed again, but thicker. He took one step toward it, then another. The walls felt closer, the ceiling lower. The light didn't reach far into the tunnel, just enough to show uneven edges. Then darkness again. His breathing slowed, then hitched. A flicker. Light. Different light. Not from the flashlight. White. Blinding. The sound followed. A crack. A pressure wave. The tunnel shifted. No. Not this tunnel. Another one. Rock. Dust falling. Voices shouting. Move! Move! Daniel's hand shot out, slamming against the steel wall beside him. The flashlight beam jerked wildly. His chest tightened. Air stopped. The tunnel in front of him collapsed inward. Not real. Not here. But his body didn't know that. His breathing broke into sharp, shallow pulls, too fast, too tight. His hand fumbled for the rope at his side. Missed. Slipped. The walls felt like they were closing in. His knees bent slightly. Balance shifting. The light shook, then, above him, faint, muffled, a sound. Scratching. Fast. Desperate. Koda. Daniel froze. Listened. There it was again. Claws against metal. Short barks. Urgent. Not distant. Right above him. Daniel sucked in a breath. Painful. But real. I'm here, he rasped. His voice echoed back at him hollow. He stopped. Forced another breath. Slower. He focused on the sound. Koda. Alive. Above ground. Not a tunnel in Afghanistan. Not a collapse, not buried. He grabbed the rope. Grip steady now. Hold, he muttered, more to himself than the dog. The panic didn't vanish, but it cracked. Just enough. He pushed off the wall, straightened, forced his eyes back to the room, the pipes, the peeling paint, the ladder behind him. Real. He turned once more toward the tunnel. Didn't step forward, not now. Instead, he swept the flashlight across the room. A metal shelf. Rust creeping along the edges. Something sitting on it. He moved closer. The beam steadied. A book. Leather-bound. Warped. Covered in a thin film of grime. Beside it, a small metal box. Daniel grabbed both. Didn't hesitate. Didn't open them. Not here. Above him, Koda's scratching grew louder, more frantic. Daniel turned back to the ladder, clipped the rope tighter, started climbing. Faster now, rung after rung. The light above widened, the air shifted, cleaner, cooler. He pulled himself over the edge, boots scraping against the dirt as he rolled onto the surface. The sky hit him, wide, open, real. But Koda was on him instantly. The dog's body pressed against his chest, whining, nudging, checking, moving fast, then still, then fast again. Daniel let the items drop beside him, wrapped one arm around the dog's neck, held there. Breathing in, out. Slower now. The field stretched around them, unchanged. Except it wasn't. Not anymore. Daniel pulled back slightly. Looked at Koda. The dog's eyes locked on his. Steady. Present. Daniel nodded once, then looked down at what he'd brought up from the dark. The leather book, the metal box. He didn't open them. Not yet. Behind him, the hatch lay open, and beneath it, the tunnel waited. Daniel didn't close the hatch right away. He stood there in the open field, the wind pushing lightly against his back, eyes fixed on the black square cut into the earth. Koda stayed pressed close, shoulder against his leg, body angled toward the opening, as if he could block it by standing there. Daniel bent down, picked up the leather book first. It felt heavier than it should have. The cover was stiff, warped from years underground. When he brushed his thumb across it, a fine layer of dust came away, leaving a darker mark beneath. He turned it once in his hands. No title. No markings on the outside. Just age. He grabbed the metal box next, smaller than he expected. Solid. Cold. No obvious latch. Just a seam running along the edge. Daniel glanced once more at the open hatch, then down at Koda. The dog didn't look at him. He was staring into the darkness. Still. Daniel reached down, took the edge of the hatch, and pulled. The metal groaned as it came down, heavy, reluctant, as it settled into place with a dull, final sound that seemed to sink into the ground itself. Daniel didn't move for a second after that. Then he turned. "Let's go." Koda didn't hesitate. The house felt smaller when they stepped back inside. The air thicker. Or maybe that was just him. Daniel set the items down on the kitchen table. Didn't sit. Didn't remove his boots. He stood over them for a long moment, hands resting on the edge of the wood, eyes moving from one object to the other. Koda circled once near the door, then came to a stop beside the table. Close. Watching. Daniel reached for the book first. His fingers paused just above it, then closed. The leather creaked slightly as he opened it. The first page stuck for a second before peeling away. The smell hit him, old, damp, but not rot, but close enough to make the back of his throat tighten. He turned the page. Rows of writing. Neat. Precise. Blue ink faded but still legible. Columns. Numbers. Notes. Not a diary. A log. Daniel leaned closer. His eyes tracked the lines automatically, picking out patterns before meaning. Dates. Times. Short entries. Most of them routine. Pressure stable. Readings nominal. Then, a name. Initials. He stopped. M.W. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. He turned the page. Same initials. Again. And again. Further down. The handwriting changed. Same structure. Different pressure. Less steady. He read one line twice. Then a third time. Integrity compromised. The room felt quieter. Koda shifted his weight beside him. Daniel flipped forward. More entries. Shorter now. More gaps between them. Then, a line scratched deeper into the page. Harder. Recommend halt. Daniel's fingers pressed into the edge of the paper. The next entry. Different initials. Not M.W. He stared at it, then moved on. The last pages were worse. Messier. Ink darker. Words overlapping in places. The final entry sat crooked across the page. Not aligned. Not controlled. Sight sealed. Daniel closed the book slowly. Didn't slam it. Didn't drop it. Just shut it. His hand stayed on the cover. Still. Koda let out a low breath. Daniel shifted his attention to the metal box. He picked it up, turned it over. The seam caught the light. There. On one side, a small recessed latch. He pressed it. Nothing. Pressed harder. A faint click. The lid loosened. Daniel paused. His reflection stared back at him in the darkened window. For a second, a flicker. Not the kitchen, a different room. Dim. Concrete, and a tape recorder spinning quietly in the corner. Daniel blinked. Gone. He opened the box inside. 3 reels, plastic cases, stacked neatly, each one labeled, faded black lettering. He picked up the top one, held it closer. The words were worn, but still there. Project. The rest smeared. He set it down, reached for the second. Same format, same lettering. His fingers tightened slightly. The third reel, different, handwritten, rough. He lifted it, turned it under the light. There, clearer than the rest. Personal log. Daniel didn't move for a second. Then he set the reels aside, stood up, moved to the far corner of the room. An old cabinet sat there. He opened it, dug through wires, old tools, things left untouched for years. Then he found it, a tape player, dust-covered, heavy. He set it on the table, plugged it in, as the cord stretched tight across the counter. He wiped the surface once with his sleeve, set the reel into place, threaded the tape through the guides. His hands moved slower than they should have. Not from hesitation, from precision. He pressed the switch. The machine hummed, low, steady. The reel began to turn. For a moment, nothing, just static. Then, a click, a breath, and a voice. Test, test. Daniel froze. Koda's head snapped up. The voice continued. This is Mason Mercer. Daniel's chest tightened. Not fast, not sharp, just heavy. Private log. Off record. The words came slow, measured, like someone choosing each one carefully. Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. They've changed the parameters. A pause. Paper shifting in the background. This isn't what they told us. Daniel's fingers curled slightly against the table, and Koda moved closer, pressing against his leg. The voice wavered once, then steadied. Containment is unstable. Daniel's breathing slowed, his eyes fixed on the spinning reel. If something happens, the tape crackled. It wasn't an accident. Silence. Then, the reel kept spinning, empty. The machine hummed on. Daniel stood there, still. His hand moved slowly toward the player, hovered, then pressed the stop button. The room dropped back into silence, heavy, full. Koda shifted, pushing his head against Daniel's thigh. Daniel didn't respond, not right away. His eyes stayed on the tape, on the words that weren't there anymore. Then, he exhaled. Long, slow. His hand dropped to Koda's head. Rested there. Didn't move. You hear that? He muttered. The dog didn't answer, just stayed. Daniel turned his head slightly, looked toward the window. The north field sat quiet in the distance. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. But now, he knew. The ground hadn't just been hiding something. It had been keeping something buried. And whatever had been down there, His father had known and tried to stop it. Daniel's jaw tightened. His posture shifted. Subtle, but real. The man who had walked out to dig for water wasn't the same man standing there now. Behind him, the tape player clicked softly as the reel stopped completely, and in the silence that followed, the past didn't feel distant anymore. It felt close, too close, like it had been waiting, just beneath the surface, for someone to dig it back up. Daniel didn't touch the tape player again. He left it on the table, the reel still threaded, the machine quiet now, but not forgotten. The words lingered in the air long after the sound had stopped, like something that didn't need to be spoken twice. Koda didn't move far from him. The dog stayed within arm's reach as Daniel walked the length of the room, checking windows, pausing at each one just long enough to look without exposing himself fully. The field outside had gone dark. No moon, no stars, just a low, shifting black where the land should have been. Daniel stopped at the front window, tilted the blind slightly, watched. Nothing. He moved back, killed the lights. The house dropped into shadow. He stood there, letting his eyes adjust, tracking the shapes he already knew, the edge of the table, the chair, the doorway to the back hall. Koda shifted beside him. Not restless. Alert. Daniel lowered himself slowly into the chair. Didn't relax, just sat, listening. The wind had died down. That was the first thing. Too quiet. The second. The ground. He couldn't hear it, but he felt it. Not movement. Absence, what? Like something underneath had gone still on purpose. Koda's head lifted. A low sound built in his chest. Daniel didn't move. He followed the dog's gaze toward the door. Then, a sound. Faint. Crunch. Gravel. Daniel's hand tightened on the armrest. Another crunch. Closer. Measured. Vehicle. He stood up without a sound, moved to the side of the window again. Careful. Slow. A shape came into view. Black. Low. Clean. An SUV rolled to a stop about 30 yards from the house. Engine cut. No headlights. Just the outline against the dark. Daniel's breathing slowed. Not panic. Calculation. Koda stepped forward. Not barking. Not yet. Yet the dog's body lowered slightly, weight shifting forward, muscles tightening under his coat. The first door opened, soft, controlled. Then the second. 2 figures stepped out. Dark clothing, sharp lines. They didn't look around like they were lost. They walked straight toward the house. Daniel moved to the door, unlocked the deadbolt quietly, left the chain on, opened it just enough to see through. Koda filled the gap instantly, head forward, eyes locked. The men stopped a few feet from the porch. The older one spoke first. "Mr. Mercer." His voice was calm, even, too even. Daniel didn't answer right away. He watched. The man stood relaxed, hands visible, posture open. But his eyes didn't match. Flat, reading. Beside him, the younger man shifted slightly, his gaze flicking to Koda, then back to Daniel. "Who's asking?" Daniel said. The older man gave a small nod. "Name's Collins. This is my associate, Grant. We're with land management." Daniel didn't move. "Land management doesn't come out here after dark." Collins didn't blink. "Unusual circumstances." A pause. Then, "We've had a report of ground disturbance on this property." Daniel felt something settle into place. Not surprise. Confirmation. He kept his voice level. You got paperwork? Collins smiled slightly. Thin, professional. We can handle that in the morning. Right now, we just need a look. Grant took a half step forward. Koda's growl came out low and deep. Not loud, but enough. Grant stopped. Collins raised a hand slightly, not looking away from Daniel. No need for that. Daniel rested his hand lightly against the door. Not pushing, not pulling, you're just there. You're not coming in, he said. Flat. Collins held his gaze. A longer pause this time, the kind that stretched just enough to test something. Then he nodded once. Understood. He took a small step back. We'll return at a more appropriate hour. Grant's eyes lingered on Koda for a second longer. Then he turned. Both men walked back to the SUV. Same controlled pace. No rush. Doors opened. Closed. The engine started. The vehicle reversed, turned, and rolled away into the dark. Daniel didn't close the door right away. He watched until the sound of the engine disappeared completely. Then he shut it, locked it. Chain slid into place with a quiet click. Koda didn't move. The dog stayed at the door, head low, eyes fixed on the space where the men had stood. Daniel stepped back slowly, but the room felt smaller now, tighter. He moved to the table, looked at the tape, at the book, at the metal box, then back to the door. They know, he said under his breath. Koda's ears flicked. Daniel picked up the leather book again, held it, then set it back down. His gaze shifted to the window, then to the wall, then back to the door. Patterns. Timing. The visit wasn't random. Too clean. Too direct. Someone had seen, or heard, or... Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Tracked back through the last 24 hours. Harold. The field. The hatch. The sound. Koda moved suddenly. A sharp turn. He stepped away from the door and toward the back of the house, body tense again. Daniel followed immediately. No hesitation. They moved through the hall, into the back room. Koda stopped at the rear window, growled, yet Daniel eased up beside him, looked out. Nothing. Just darkness. But there, farther out, near the ridge, a faint reflection. Glass catching what little light there was, gone as soon as he focused on it. Daniel didn't blink, didn't move. Someone had been watching from out there. Longer than the SUV had been in the driveway. He stepped back from the window. Koda followed. The dog stayed close now, closer than before. Daniel moved through the house again. Checked the locks, the back door, the side window. Everything sealed. Then he returned to the main room, stood still, listening. Nothing outside. No engine. No footsteps. But the feeling hadn't left. Daniel looked down at Koda. The dog met his eyes. Steady. Waiting. Daniel nodded once. Small. Subtle. Then he reached for the lights. Stopped, but left them off. The house stayed dark. Outside. The land stretched silent, but it wasn't empty anymore. And whatever had been buried wasn't the only thing watching. Daniel didn't sleep, not even close. He sat in the chair with the lights off, boots still on, one hand resting near the edge of the table, the other hanging loose but ready. Koda lay at his feet at first. Then halfway through the night, the dog got up. No sound, no warning. Just stood. Daniel noticed without looking. His eyes stayed on the dark window. "What is it?" he murmured. Koda didn't answer. The dog moved slowly toward the front of the house, stopped, head angled, listening. Daniel leaned forward slightly. Then he heard it too. Not an engine, not footsteps. Something softer. A shift. Wind. No. Wrong direction. Too localized. Oh, Daniel stood. Slow. Controlled. He moved to the side of the window again. Didn't look directly out. Just enough angle to catch reflection. Nothing. But Koda's body stiffened. The growl started again. Low. Deeper than before. Daniel stepped back. Something was off. Not a visit. Not a warning. This felt different. His eyes moved quickly across the room. Door. Back exit. Windows. Then, a smell. Faint. At first. Then sharper. Daniel froze. His head tilted slightly. Air. He drew in a slow breath and caught it. Smoke. Not from the stove. Not inside. Outside. Koda barked. Sharp. Immediate. Daniel moved. Fast now. No hesitation. He crossed the room in 3 strides, yanked the door open. Heat hit him first. A sudden wave, then light. Orange. Violent. The barn. And its flames were already climbing the side of it, licking up the dry wood like it had been waiting to burn. Daniel's vision narrowed. Not fear. Reaction. Distance. Wind direction. Fuel source. Stay, he snapped. But Koda was already moving. The dog bolted past him, not toward the barn, toward the side, circling. Daniel grabbed the fire extinguisher by the door and ran. The ground felt uneven under his boots, but his stride didn't break. His focus locked on the fire. Not the cause, not yet. The flames were spreading fast, too fast, accelerant. He reached the edge, yanked the pin, and discharged the extinguisher toward the base. White foam blasted outward, useless. The fire pushed back, hungry. Daniel stepped back instinctively, heat forcing him away. Then, a sound. Behind him, too close. As Daniel turned. A shadow moved from the side of the house. Fast, low, closing distance. Daniel didn't think, didn't process. He reacted. His body shifted left. Just as the figure lunged, impact glanced off his shoulder instead of center mass. Daniel staggered half a step, then pivoted. The man came again. No words, no hesitation. Daniel's hand came up automatically. Intercept. Deflect. Grip. The man's arm twisted under Daniel's hold, but he didn't go down. Strong. Trained. Daniel saw it in the way he moved. Short steps. No wasted motion. This wasn't random. The man reached inside his jacket. Daniel drove forward, shoulder into chest, hard. Both men hit the ground. Dust kicked up. The heat from the fire pressed against them. The man tried to roll. Daniel shifted weight, pinned him halfway. Then, a blur. A gray. Fast. Koda. The dog hit the man from the side with full force. A solid, violent impact that broke the man's balance completely. He went flat. Koda didn't bark, didn't hesitate. He latched onto the man's arm. Daniel heard the fabric tear. The man yelled. Sharp, uncontrolled. Koda held, locked. Daniel pushed up to his knees. The man's free hand swung wildly. Hit Koda once, hard. The dog didn't release. Daniel moved in, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted. The motion was clean, efficient. The man's hand opened, empty, no weapon. Daniel drove his forearm across the man's throat, pinned him. The man struggled. Then, from the fire, A crack, loud, metal. Daniel's head snapped toward it. A fuel drum near the barn buckled under the heat, then exploded. The blast wasn't massive, but it was enough. The shockwave hit him. Heat surged. Light. White. Too bright. Sound vanished. For a fraction of a second, the world shifted. Not the ranch. Not Idaho. Dust. Fire. A vehicle ahead. Gone. Daniel froze. His grip loosened. His eyes lost focus. The man beneath him felt it. Twisted. Pulled. Daniel didn't react. Not fast enough. The moment stretched. Then, Koda. The dog shifted position, released the arm, then drove forward again, hitting the man in the chest. Not a bite this time. A shove, breaking his movement. The jolt snapped something back in Daniel's head. The light changed. The fire became the barn again. The air rushed back into his lungs. Sound returned. The crackle, the roar, the man gasping beneath him. Daniel blinked once. Focus snapped into place. He drove his weight down. It pinned the man again. Harder. This time, no hesitation. The man struggled, then slowed, then stopped, breathing heavy, defeated. Daniel didn't move off him right away. He held position. Counted. 1, 2, 3. Then he shifted. Slowly. Koda stood over the man, chest heaving, teeth bared. Blood darkened the fur around his muzzle. Daniel looked at the dog, then down. The man's sleeve was torn open, skin beneath marked, but not destroyed, controlled. Daniel grabbed the man's jacket, turned him, checked. No badge, no identification visible, but the eyes. Cold, focused. Not a thief, not a drifter. Daniel pushed off him, stood. Koda stayed, watching. Daniel looked toward the house, then the field, then the road. No headlights, no backup. The SUV wasn't back, which meant this wasn't just a visit. It was escalation. Daniel stepped back. "Move," he said. The man didn't. Koda growled, low. The man hesitated, then slowly rolled to his side, got to his knees, staggered up. He didn't speak, didn't threaten, just looked at Daniel once, then turned, ran, into the dark. Daniel didn't chase, didn't need to. He watched until the shadow disappeared completely. Then he turned. The barn was gone. Nothing left but flame and collapsing beams. Daniel stood there, still. The heat washed over him. Koda moved closer, pressed against his leg again. Daniel reached down. His hand found the dog's shoulder, then stopped. Koda flinched, just slightly. Daniel's eyes sharpened. He crouched, ran his hand more carefully this time. There, just beneath the fur, a tear, not deep, all but bleeding. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Hold still," he murmured. Koda didn't pull away, didn't whine, just stood, watching him. Daniel pressed his hand gently over the wound. The dog's breathing slowed, matched his. Behind them, the fire roared. The barn collapsed inward with a shower of sparks. Daniel didn't look back. His focus stayed on the dog, on the steady rise and fall of Koda's chest, on the warmth under his hand. After a moment, he nodded once, more to himself than anything. Then he stood, looked out into the dark again. Different now, not uncertain, not reactive. Something had changed. They weren't being watched anymore. They were being engaged, and that meant this wasn't about the land, or the water, or the past. This was active, deliberate. Daniel's posture shifted, subtle, but final. When he rested his hand briefly on Koda's head, then looked toward the house. "We're not waiting anymore," he said quietly. The fire behind him burned higher, but Daniel Mercer was no longer on defense. The fire burned itself out by dawn. What remained of the barn stood as a blackened frame against a pale Idaho sky, thin curls of smoke drifting upward like something unfinished. Daniel didn't try to save it, didn't call anyone, didn't stand there and watch it fall apart either. He had already moved on. By first light, he was inside, working. The kitchen table was cleared except for what mattered: the leather logbook, the reels, the metal box. Koda lay near the doorway, head up, eyes tracking every movement despite the stiffness in his shoulder. Daniel had cleaned the wound in silence. No soft words, no fuss. Just steady hands, gauze, pressure. Koda had taken it without a sound. Now the dog stayed alert, not resting, guarding. Daniel moved through the house differently now. Angles, lines of sight, entry points. He checked the windows again, adjusted one of the chairs just slightly, so it gave him a better view of the back door without exposing his position. The old habits weren't coming back. They had never left. He just hadn't needed them. Until now. Daniel stopped at the table, looked at the tape player, didn't touch it. Not again. He already had what he needed from it. Instead, he opened the leather logbook once more, flipped to the final entries, read them again. Slower this time, looking for what wasn't obvious. Patterns, gaps, changes in tone. His finger traced one line. Relieved of duty, then another. All unauthorized continuation. Daniel's jaw tightened. He turned the page back, then forward, then stopped. There. A notation. Small, almost missed. Coordinates. Not labeled, just numbers. Daniel stared at them. Memorized. Closed the book. Koda shifted. Daniel looked over. The dog wasn't watching him anymore. He was watching the door. Ears forward. Body still. Daniel stood slowly. Walked to the front of the house, paused, listened. Nothing. But the stillness was wrong again. Not empty, held. He moved to the side window, checked the ridge. Nothing visible. But he didn't expect to see anything anymore. They weren't careless. They were patient. Daniel stepped back, ran a hand over his face, stopped halfway. His hand hovered there, shaking, just slightly. He lowered it, looked at it, then clenched it once, opened it again. The memory hit without warning. Flash, heat, pressure, a vehicle in front of him. Gone. Sound cutting out, then screaming back in. Daniel blinked hard. His breathing shortened. Not panicked, but close. His shoulders tightened. Locked. For a second, he wasn't in the house. Koda moved. Fast. The dog crossed the room and pressed his head firmly into Daniel's hand. Not gently. Deliberate. Grounding. Daniel's focus snapped downward. To the dog. To the weight. To the present. He exhaled. Long, slow. His hand dropped onto Koda's head. Stayed there. Easy, he muttered. More to himself than anything. Koda didn't move. Didn't pull away, just stayed. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, opened them again. Clear. The shake in his hand was gone. but replaced by something colder, more precise. He straightened, looked around the room again. This time, not as a man reacting, but as a man planning. "They came once," he said quietly. "They'll come again." Koda's ears flicked. Daniel nodded once. Decision made. He moved to the back room, opened the closet, pushed past coats and old gear until he reached a cedar chest at the bottom. He hesitated, just for a second, then opened it. Inside, old things, personal, untouched for years. He moved them aside carefully. Not rough, not careless. Just enough. At the bottom, an old metal ammunition box, military issue. Thick steel, rubber seal. Daniel pulled it out, set it on the floor, opened it. Empty. He stood there for a moment, looking at it, then turned, back to the kitchen. He gathered the items. The leather logbook, the tapes, the metal box. Each one placed carefully into the container. No rush, no hesitation. This wasn't hiding. This was positioning. He closed the lid, latched it. The metal snapped shut with a solid, final sound. Koda watched the whole time. Daniel picked up the box. Heavy now. Real. He carried it to the door. Paused. Looked back once at the house. Then stepped outside. The air was cold. Clean. Too clean for what had happened hours earlier. The burned structure behind him still smoldered, but the heat was gone. Only the damage remained. Daniel didn't look at it. He walked past, toward the field, toward the stone pile. Koda followed, closer than before, matching his pace exactly. Daniel reached the mound, stopped, looked down at the ground where the hatch lay beneath, then stepped to the side, a few feet off. Different spot. He set the box down, grabbed a shovel from the bulldozer, started digging. The ground was hard, packed, each strike deliberate, measured. Koda moved outward, circling, scanning the perimeter. The dog stopped once, looked toward the ridge, then back to Daniel, then resumed his watch. Daniel dug deep, not wide, a narrow hole, just enough. Sweat built under his collar despite the cold. His breathing stayed steady, controlled. After several minutes, he stopped. Depth was enough. He lifted the box, lowered it into the ground. It settled with a dull, solid weight. Daniel filled the hole back in, packed the dirt down tight, pressed it flat with the shovel, then with his boot, until it matched the surrounding ground. No marker, no sign, but nothing visible. He stepped back, looked at it, then looked at the mound, at the unseen hatch beneath it. Two secrets, side by side. Only one of them known. Daniel turned, walked back toward the bulldozer, climbed into the seat, started the engine. The machine roared to life, loud, heavy. He lowered the blade, drove forward, slow, controlled. The steel edge pushed dirt over the area, flattened it, covered any trace of disturbance. When he stopped, there was nothing left to see, just ground. Daniel killed the engine. Silence returned. Koda stood below him, looking up. Daniel climbed down, stopped beside the dog, rested his hand on Koda's head. "You did good," he said quietly. Koda's tail moved once. Slow. Daniel looked back at the field, at the ridge, at the empty horizon. "They think I found something," he added. A pause. "They're right." His eyes hardened slightly. But they don't know what I kept. Koda stayed close. Daniel turned, started back toward the house. His pace steady, measured, no hesitation. Behind him, the ground held its secret. Ahead of him, the fight hadn't ended. It had just changed. Daniel didn't go back inside right away. He stopped on the porch, listened. The land was quiet again. Too quiet. Koda stood beside him, body angled outward, watching the open ground like it might move if he looked away. Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. The numbers, coordinates. He unfolded it once, looked, then folded it again. Decision didn't take long. He stepped inside, moved straight to the phone, picked it up, paused, and then set it back down. Not yet. Not that way. He turned, grabbed a second metal box from the cabinet. Same shape, same size. Empty. He filled it quickly. Scrap metal, old tools, anything with weight, anything that would sound right if dropped. He closed it, latched it, set it by the door. Koda watched him, head tilted slightly. Daniel knelt down, looked him in the eyes. "You stay quiet," he said. Low, controlled. "Until I say otherwise." Koda didn't move, didn't blink, just held the stare. Daniel stood, grabbed the decoy box, then his jacket, slipped it on, checked the fit automatically. He stepped outside. The truck sat where he'd left it, dust still clinging to the sides. He opened the back door, tapped twice on the floor behind the seat. Koda moved, climbed in. It curled into the shadowed space without a sound. Daniel pulled a blanket over the gap, closed the door, walked around, got in, started the engine. The truck rolled forward, slow at first, then steady. He didn't look back at the house, didn't look at the field. Just drove. The road cut through open land, low hills, sparse trees, nothing to hide behind. Daniel's eyes moved constantly. Mirror, road, edges, back again. No vehicle followed. That didn't mean anything. He knew better. The coordinates led toward a canyon. Narrow, steep walls, limited exits, not a place you stumbled into by accident. He slowed as the terrain shifted. The ground turned rougher, rockier, the air colder. Koda remained still behind him, silent, waiting. Daniel drove the last stretch without headlights, and let the early light guide him instead. Gray sky, faint horizon. He saw them before they saw him. The SUV, parked between two rock formations, positioned, intentional. Daniel stopped short. Engine idling, distance held. He stepped out, left the door open, picked up the metal box, walked forward. Slow, measured. The canyon swallowed sound. Even his footsteps felt muted. The two men stepped into view. Same ones. Collins. Grant. Grant's arm was wrapped. Makeshift. Blood had soaked through in places. His face was tight. Angry. Collins looked the same. Calm. Unchanged. "You came alone," Collins said. Daniel didn't answer. He set the box down halfway between them. "Where is it?" Grant snapped. Daniel glanced at him, then back to Collins. "You don't get to ask first," Daniel said. Flat. Collins studied him, then nodded slightly. "Fair enough." He gestured. From behind the rocks, a figure stepped forward, older, hands bound. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Harold Pike, the neighbor. Harold's face was pale, bruised, but conscious. Daniel's jaw tightened. Grant smiled thinly. "He talked," he said. Daniel didn't react, didn't move. His eyes stayed on Harold, then back to Collins. "You grabbed the wrong man," Daniel said. Collins tilted his head slightly. "Did we?" Daniel stepped forward one pace, then stopped. "That box," Collins said, nodding toward it. "Open it." Daniel didn't hesitate. He flipped the latch, lifted the lid. Inside. Scrap, metal, junk. Grant's face twisted instantly. "What?" Daniel moved. Not fast, not yet. He put 2 fingers to his mouth. Sharp whistle. The sound cut through the canyon. High. Piercing. Grant turned. Too late. The back window of the truck exploded outward. Glass scattered. Koda launched. A gray blur. Fast. Precise. He hit Grant first. Full impact. Grant went down hard. Koda didn't bite immediately. He drove him back. Pinned him. Then latched. Grant yelled. Sharp. Raw. Collins moved. Hand reaching. Daniel was already on him. The distance closed in 2 strides. He hit Collins low, hard, drove him into the rock. The impact knocked the breath out of him. Collins swung. Daniel blocked, turned, struck once, clean, controlled. Collins dropped, not unconscious, but done. Daniel stepped back, breathing steady, eyes scanning. Grant struggled beneath Koda, couldn't get free. The dog held position, didn't release, didn't overcommit. Daniel moved to Harold. Cut the bindings. Yeah, Harold stumbled. "Get back," Daniel said. Harold didn't argue. He moved. Fast. Then... sound. Distant at first. Then closer. Engines. Multiple. Daniel's head turned. Lights appeared at both ends of the canyon. Vehicles. Closing in. Not black. Not silent. Law enforcement. Grant froze. Collins didn't move. Daniel didn't step away. Didn't raise his hands. He just stood there. Koda released on command. Stepped back. Still ready. The vehicles stopped. Doors opened. Voices filled the canyon. Commands. Clear. Sharp. Daniel stepped away from Collins. Raised his hands slightly. Not surrender. Control. Officers moved in. Weapons drawn. Grant was secured first. Then Collins. Both restrained. Harold sat on a rock, breathing hard. Daniel stood still. Koda pressed against his leg again. Solid. Present. That's an officer approached. Looked at Daniel. Then at the men on the ground. Then at the dog. "What happened here?" he asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. He looked past him, at the canyon walls, at the open sky above, at the space where this had all come together. Then he spoke. "They came for something that wasn't theirs," he said. Simple. The officer nodded slowly, took that in. Behind them. The SUV sat silent, useless now. The canyon held the echoes of what had just happened. Then, nothing. Daniel looked down at Koda. The dog looked back. Tail moved once, slow. Daniel nodded. Good boy. The fight hadn't ended, but for the first time, they weren't alone in it anymore. The noise faded faster than Daniel expected. Sirens gone, engines gone, and even the voices from the canyon seemed to disappear once the vehicles pulled away, taking Collins and Grant with them. What stayed behind was the silence, the real kind, the kind that settles after something breaks. Daniel didn't follow anyone, didn't give statements, didn't linger longer than necessary. Harold had been taken into town, shaken but alive. The officers had asked questions. Daniel had answered just enough. Nothing about the hatch, nothing about the tunnel, nothing about the tapes. Some things didn't belong in reports. Some things stayed buried. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks for the smoke to stop clinging to the air. 3 weeks for the blackened remains of the barn to be cleared. 3 weeks for the ground to stop smelling like something that had been burned too fast. Daniel worked every day, was slow, steady. The new structure began as a frame, then walls, then shape. Nothing fancy, nothing wasted. Just enough. Koda stayed with him the whole time. The bandage on his shoulder had come off after the first week. The fur grew back uneven, a thin scar hidden beneath it. But the dog moved like he always had, alert, precise, never far. The letters came too, bank notices, then calls, then silence. The foreclosure stopped. No explanation that made sense. Just a shift, like someone had decided the land wasn't worth the trouble anymore. Daniel didn't question it, didn't trust it either. One morning, the trucks came. Not local, not familiar. Government plates. Clean. Too clean for the roads out here. They didn't ask permission. Didn't knock. They drove straight out to the field. As Daniel watched from the porch, Koda at his side. Still. Waiting. Men stepped out. Hard hats, equipment. No suits this time. No conversations. They moved with purpose. Marked the ground. Then started pouring. Concrete. Thick. Gray. Permanent. Daniel didn't interrupt. Didn't walk out. Didn't say a word. He just stood there. Watching. Koda didn't bark. Didn't growl. The dog watched too. The entire area around the stone pile was covered, layer by layer, until nothing remained visible. No seam, no hatch, no sign. Just a slab. Flat, cold, stamped, government property. Do not disturb. The trucks left before sunset. The men didn't look back. Neither did Daniel. A week later, everything looked normal again. Too normal. The field stretched out the way it always had. Us grass pushing through where it could. Wind moving across it without resistance. The new barn stood complete. Clean wood, solid frame. A fresh start that didn't feel new. Just repaired. Daniel walked out into the field that evening. Koda beside him. No leash. No command needed. They stopped near the concrete slab. Didn't step onto it. Didn't need to. Daniel looked at it once, then past it. Just a few feet to the side. Bare ground. Unmarked. Undisturbed. To anyone else, nothing. To him, everything. He stood there for a long time, hands at his sides, breathing steady. No tension in his shoulders anymore. No tightness in his jaw. Just stillness. Koda moved closer, sat down beside him, pressed lightly against his leg. The dog's tail moved once. Slow. Daniel reached down, rested his hand on Koda's head, your fingers settling into the fur. Warm. Real. Still there, he said quietly, not looking down, not looking at the slab. Just knowing. Koda didn't respond. Didn't need to. The wind shifted slightly, carried across the field. Clean. Empty. Daniel turned, looked back toward the house, toward the barn, toward what was still his. The past hadn't been erased. It had been covered. There was a difference. He knew it. And somewhere beneath the surface, proof still waited. Not gone. Not destroyed. Just placed where it couldn't be taken. Daniel gave Koda's head one last steady pat, then stepped away from the field. Didn't look back again. Koda followed immediately, matching his pace. As they walked toward the house, the light faded slowly across the land. No urgency, no fear, just distance. And something quieter underneath it. Not victory, not closure. Something steadier. Acceptance. The fight had come, passed through, and left its mark. But Daniel Mercer was still standing, and beside him, the dog who never stepped back. "Come on," Daniel said. Low. Clear. "Let's go home." Koda moved ahead slightly, then slowed, waiting. Together. They walked on, and behind them, the stone held its silence. But some things don't stay buried forever. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something simple. What would you do if you were Daniel? Would you walk away and leave it buried? Or would you go back and open it again? Comment 1 if you would leave it alone. Comment 2 if you would go back down there. No long messages needed, just a number. I read every single one. Oh, and if this story stayed with you, even just a little, hit subscribe, because the next story waiting for you might be even deeper, darker, and closer to the truth than this one. Stay with us.